If they can make the nurses do it, then they can make the teachers do it. And then they can do it to all the children, and they can take parental rights away. And it's just a slippery slope that keeps going.
Well, we know exactly what they can do because we've seen the history of this. We know that at the Nuremberg trials, one of the things that came out of that was the Nuremberg Code, which said that you must have informed consent in all cases, because if you don't have informed consent, eventually you're going to get down, as you point out, to this slippery slope where they start doing medical experimentation on people, heinous experiments that they did in the concentration camps, that the Japanese doctors also did, justifying it in the name of the greater good of society. Anything can be justified in the name of the greater good of society. And we have to realize that society is never going to be a good society if you trample on the rights of the individuals that make up that society. That's the fundamental issue, I think.
It is the fundamental issue. And I think that what is going on in this country right now with legislation all across the country, you know, and you said we don't even have to talk about statistics and side effects and things like that, but there's these intense conversations going on that don't even involve what is ethically correct, and it's not involving what actually is the truth. So we're spending all this time and money trying to make this group have a flu shot that was 16% effective, knowing that the Department of Justice, March 5th, 2015, for the previous quarter, settled 92 cases, and 73 of them were for flu shot injuries.
Yes, and of course we have the vaccine court, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. That's been around for a very long time, which takes away most of your rights if you are damaged by a pharmaceutical vaccine. People should be questioning why we have a vaccine court, why it is necessary to have that. It seems to me like they were admitting when they did it back in 1986 that they were having so many cases that they needed to set up this court that would not allow you to sue so they can continue on with vaccines. We talked at the beginning of the program how they're using financial punishment to force hospital systems to get their staff vaccinated. But of course, there is a huge financial incentive for the vaccine companies to push this when they don't have any liability. And we should all ask, why are we being forced to buy and to inject a product for which the manufacturers don't have any personal liability?
We need to ask that question, and we need to follow the dollar at all times.
Yes.
You know, if we're down, I'm down in Texas at the Capitol fighting, and it's like, if I feel like I can get down there and away from my patient load for one day, that I've been victorious. But, you know, I walk away from there and I realize those pharmaceutical reps are there every single day, and there's a lot of them, and they throw around a lot of money.
Yes.
And it's happening every single day. And we need to pay attention to, is this about money, or are we really talking about people and what's best for them and what's ethically correct about that I can make a decision about my body for myself?
Exactly. I think we are losing our fundamental human rights for the profits of the pharmaceutical companies. And the reason I say that is because look at the fact that just within the last couple of years, they announced that they were going to stop all work on antibiotics. They were going to focus solely on vaccines. And if you look at every single kind of treatment that they're coming up for every possible malady or disease, they're calling everything a vaccine. And clearly they have a financial incentive to do this if there's a national vaccine court that takes away their liability. They can produce these pharmaceutical products with zero liability and then force us with a gun to our head to take their products. It's an absolutely amazing scam. This makes the bank bailouts that happened the first part of the the early 2000s. That makes that look like nothing compared to this, because they're able to hold a gun to your head, force you to buy their product. If it damages you or your family, you don't have any compensation from it except from a court, which is kind of an arbitration process. It's not a real compensation process.
Right. I mean, when you're looking at how many cases are brought and how many cases are settled, there's an inordinate amount of money that has been paid out, but percentage-wise of people that go through the trauma of doing that and stick through all the years that it takes and then finally get the money, I mean, what really could be paid out in this country is very big.
Yes.
And it's deeper and it's more insidious than that. You know, I really believe that the greatest coup that's been pulled over on this country by Western medicine, backed by all this money of Big Pharma, and their protection and all the money they're making and throwing is the convincing of the women in this country as a whole to ignore their maternal instincts.
Yes.
I mean, it's deep.
While we're talking about that, speak to the issue that now they're removing the recommendations that pregnant women not get vaccinated because this is something that's been there for a very long time, but now they're moving that back. So can you speak to that? Have you seen that?
I can. I've seen that, especially being around the NICU and being on postpartum floors and seeing what's going on. I'm just absolutely dumbfounded because all you have to do is go pull the vaccine insert and they will say on there, not approved for pregnant and lactating women.
Yes. Let me ask you
over and over again.
Yes, absolutely. And since you're a neonatal nurse, let me ask you what your opinion is. I know we've had a lot of doctors saying that they believe that we're vaccinating the children too early with too many vaccines, that in and of itself has caused a lot of problems because they don't have an immune system that's developed to be effective even for this, but it also presents dangers to them with the preservatives and the adjuvants. Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I think we are doing them too young. I think we are doing way too many at once if you just look at how fast the schedule has grown. But I think what a lot of people don't realize in a closed space like a NICU is they've decided that we need to vaccinate these babies on time. 2 months after they're born, bam, there it goes.
Mm-hmm.
This baby could be 4 months early and still supposed to be inside their mother and weighing 3 or 4 pounds and
that's a
getting
good point.
the same amount of vaccine as a 200-pound man. And I've sat in a room with all of our on-call staff, physicians and practitioners, like, oh, wow, this is so embarrassing. This 25-weeker never actually required a breathing tube and going on the vent, after he was born. He was so strong, but we gave him his 2-month vaccinations and he got intubated last night. Ha, 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 oops, how embarrassing. Like, it's funny.
Wow.
I mean, the step-down units are calling the NICU saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and give these 4 babies their 2-month shots today. Make sure you have beds ready because we all know they're going to have increased breathing difficulty, feeding and digestion difficulty, apnea, forgetting to breathe and bradycardia. This is what goes on. So
the whole medical ethic of first do no harm just goes out the door so they can follow the vaccine company's schedule.
Somehow it's just everybody's on this straight, they're marching the line of this is what we need to do. Mm-hmm. And so now that I'm in private practice in the clinics, you just see these kids, they are so sick and they come in sick and a lot of pediatricians are giving them vaccines while they're sick, even though that is a contraindication, and they're just getting kicked while they're down over and over and over again. So chronic ear infections, of course, the autism rate, 1 in 64. Who knows what the number is going to be next?
Yes.
Eczema, all sorts of just asthma, all sorts of problems going on. And we just keep towing the line. I really don't understand.
And of course, speak to this issue of herd mentality. This is, I'm sorry, I keep calling it herd mentality because that's what it is. They talk about herd immunity, okay? And they try to point out that, they're only going to be safe if everybody gets the vaccine. That's how they scare everybody about this. But of course, as we've reported at INFOWARS.com, we've got students at a school that had a 99.5% vaccination rate for whooping cough. Nevertheless, they had 1 child come down with it and transmitted it to 3 more of his 5th grade peers. We had a case in Canada, in Quebec, where 52 of 98 teens caught the measles and they had been fully vaccinated. We had a case in New York in 2011 where a twice vaccinated person came down with measles and then transmitted it to 4 other people, 2 of which had vaccine records that they had been vaccinated twice. The other 2 had antibodies indicating that they had been vaccinated. So herd immunity isn't really going to protect anybody, is it?
No, it's not. That was a great theory when we thought that vaccines would give lifetime immunity like natural disease. And of course, we figured out that it hasn't. So we've got all these adults walking around upset that there might be a kid out there around their kid that's not vaccinated, but they're completely non-immune at this point. And it just, it's virology. Viruses change. They will always outsmart, I think. And, you know, everybody's upset about the measles, and we've got, what is it, Japan at a 99% vaccination rate, and they have the biggest outbreak right now. So it's a nice theory, but I on my desk, the infectious diseases in children newsletter here in the front page. Unpredictability remains the one constant with seasonal influenza, admitting that last year had dismal results. And at the end of that article, what does it say? But you all should still be making sure that every single one of your patients is vaccinated for the flu this next season.
Wow.
And I read it and I just go, I don't understand how all these other providers are reading this and going, okay, well, that's what it says at the end of the article, so I'm going to do it.
It just amazes me when I see all these flu vaccines that are being sold in grocery stores and drugstores. I mean, I guess you can get one at a filling station pretty soon along with your fill-up. When I see that, when I see the vaccine court that removes their liability, when I see them taking away our informed consent, all of those things tell me that something is wrong. And of course, people can look into the medical issues, inform themselves, and then tell the government that you can't do things to us without our consent. It's very important, I think, that we all stand up and resist this. But in the time that we got left, we're nearly out of time. Tell us a little bit about your organization. If someone is a nurse and they are getting pressured where they work to have a mandatory vaccine, tell us about how you help people and tell us about your organization.
Well, Nurses Against Mandatory Vaccines, we do have a website. It's www.namv.org. We also have a very active Facebook page with over 20,000 members. We are trying to keep people updated on what's going on legislation, all the studies that are coming out. We have a couple of vaccine lawyers that we work with. And so we're really right now trying to provide support, provide information, especially with the nurses, letting them know, you know, you're not the only one out there dealing with having to find a medical exemption or turning in a religious exemption and wearing a mask from whatever day they say the flu starts until whatever day they say the flu magically ends, usually March 31st. And so we're really trying to round people up. And I was very impressed with the teachers this week in Texas. They came out in full force, and we're thinking that bill's going to fizzle because there was such just animosity against that bill. And so really just to support nurses and standing up for themselves. I think there's a lot of fear about how am I going to provide for my family. There's a lot of nurses that are the sole providers for their households. And so that's really what we're up against.
Yes, yes. That's a really underhanded thing to do to people. Thank you so much, Michelle Routon. And of course, nurses have been on the front line of medical care, and now you're on the front line fighting medical tyranny. I really appreciate you doing that. And the website again is namv.org. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I'll just close the program with a quote from one of our founders, Benjamin Rush, who warned us about medical tyranny. He said, unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, the time will come when medicine will organize into an undercover dictatorship to restrict the art of healing to one class of men, or as we understand it, to one gigantic industry that owns the government and thinks that they own you, the pharmaceutical companies. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, please subscribe there. It's free. But we hope that you will subscribe to Prison Planet TV and support us financially. If you do, you'll be able to get the news as it happens each Monday through Friday at 7 Central, and you can share that with up to 20 other individuals simultaneously, as well as having access to all of Alex Jones's documentaries. Stay with us, though. Right after the break, we have a special report from Alex Jones on Jade Helm. We'll be right back.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order